Merry Christmas! Merry Christmas!
Merry Christmas!
Merry Christmas!
Merry Christmas!
Merry Christmas!
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas!
Hello everyone, we welcome you out today. We are talking to Dr. Bozeman. Dr. Andy Bozeman is a pediatric surgeon here in the community. He's been on many times before. We have camouflage, we have a reflective gear here, that bright orange that you see that warns everybody where you are in the woods. And we want to talk about that safety today.
That's right.
You know, a lot of people, doctor, deal with, when do I let my child go hunting with me? How do I go about that? And more so, I hear some of my friends that, do I let them hunt alone? What age do I?
That's right.
Man, there's a lot working in there to worry about on that, isn't
A lot of
there?
questions there are.
Mm-hmm.
We typically recommend kind of an incremental staged approach, right? You take baby steps. You learn to crawl before you walk and you run. Same thing applies to hunting. We want to see kids involved in hunting. That's our heritage. That's how we let that sport stay alive.
Yeah.
But I do think you need to do it at the right stage of life.
Yeah, and so you start out first is safety, you know,
Absolutely.
And of course you take a child hunting with you, you put them in the stand, you secure them there with you, and it's more about being outside and being in nature, right?
It's the experience, right? It's not necessarily the harvest of a deer or of wild game. That's important. The kids like that part of it.
Yeah.
But it's kind of introducing them to that heritage that we all enjoy.
Yeah. What do you think? Is it best to maybe just hunt on the ground initially, or maybe get a smaller stand, maybe not a tree climbing stand?
So in general, if we're talking about wing sports, you know, that's typically hunted from the ground. That would be with a shotgun. If we're talking about deer hunting in this area, that's typically done with either archery, a bow and arrow, or either done with a rifle typically. Some people will use shotguns, but most of the time it's with a rifle. From a safety standpoint, shooting towards the ground from above, that's typically safer. So we encourage deer stands, not necessarily blinds on the ground when we're hunting deer.
Okay. And so we think about that safety, and we think about how to ensure our child's safety. So we start out, we're going to do some bird hunting. You got to teach a child about a shotgun first,
That's
right?
Gun safety is absolutely paramount. And we teach kids that the gun, you should consider it always loaded, right? We want you to have the safety on when you're not using it, but always respect that firearm as being a potentially loaded weapon. So make sure the muzzle is pointed away. It should never be pointed at anyone, certainly, but you want to make sure you have control of the end of the barrel. But safety with the gun, treat it as it's loaded.
Yeah. And I know there are different ages that a child becomes responsible, but typically, just as an average, about what age would you trust one with a small firearm?
So we usually start, you know, my kids started with Red Ryder air rifles, and they were probably 7 or 8 when they first started that, if not a little bit younger.
Yeah.
But we work our way from there to, you know, small gauge shotguns and even to rifles. But typically 6, 7, or 8, you know, with the air rifles. But you got to be careful. Some of the air rifles they make these days are very dangerous. They're not like the old, you know, you just cock the Red Ryder and it shoots.
Yeah.
Some of these have travel at increasingly high velocities.
Yeah. But what a great way to start them. We
Absolutely.
all remember that BB gun that we had.
That's right.
And how responsible were you with that?
And that's really where it starts.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, it's great advice. And then we look on, you know, we grow a little bit more and you know, it's time to go hunting. What are some things that we must be sure that we instill in the young person that they'll always do as they grow and hunt?
Well, respect for the land, respect for the firearm, respect for what we're doing, the heritage of that.
Yeah.
But they need a good mentor, right? They need someone supervising them. We start with baby steps, and then we accelerate into other, you know, parts of sporting and certainly handling a gun, but always need someone to mentor them and to be there with them.
Yeah.
And you know, the state even, they put parameters on that as well. It's advised that any child hunting should take a hunter safety course.
Yeah.
And those are available through the Georgia Department of Natural Resources.
Yeah.
Certainly any child up to 12 can't hunt alone. They need to be with a supervising adult. over 18 years of age. 12 to 15, before they could sit in a deer stand on their own, they need to have passed a hunter safety course, and they still need to be around a supervising adult.
Sure.
So the hunter safety course is very important.
And the buddy system is too. I'm sure you would agree, Doctor, that
Absolutely.
When you go hunting, really at any age, but boy, before you're 25 or 30, I mean, come on, go with a buddy. You go to your stand, they go to theirs, and
It's always good for someone to know where you are in the woods, right? I mean, this time of year, the sun sets early, it gets very dark. You want someone to know where you are. You may be outside the reach of a cell phone.
Sure.
So it's always good for someone to go in tandem, for someone to know where you are at all times.
Yeah, you got that bright orange. I'm holding camouflage. Everybody, when they go hunting, they want to put on that camouflage. They want to look like they're hunting, but that's the most important garment.
That's
isn't
right.
it?
We always want to identify our target when we're hunting, but we also want to wear something that's vibrant orange, like this vest here that would go on the outside of our camouflage, so that you can be identified. There's no mistake that you're a hunter. The deers, they're not going to pay attention to that. You're up in the tree, right?
Right.
But your fellow hunters, people in the woods, especially if you're hunting public land,
Really?
you want to make sure if you're in the woods, you're wearing orange.
Yeah. You always want to know where you are in the woods, don't you?
You
Doc?
do. And it's always, this is what I teach my kids, you positively identify your target. Once you pull the trigger, that ammunition, that bullet's never coming back.
Right.
So make with 100% certainty you know what you're shooting at.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And then we, Doctor, we look at what maybe some injuries are that you see come in from young people. What are some common things that you see?
So thankfully we don't see a lot of hunting related accidents, but some of the things that we have seen, falls from deer stands.
Yeah.
You should inspect it. It's maintenance like you would maintain your car. Between the end of deer season to the beginning of deer season, what in the world's happened?
Really?
Is your seat rotten up there? Is there debris up there? So you want to make sure that that's clean.
Yeah.
So we do see a fair amount of falls, especially in the adult population. We certainly want to avoid a firearm injury. You should never climb a deer stand with a loaded weapon. Shouldn't even be in the put the shells in your pocket until you get up in the top of the tree stand. Same thing with coming down from the tree stand. Unload the gun.
Yeah.
So those are some of the injuries that are potentially, or certainly avoidable, but some of the potential injuries that we could see.
It's worth the time to load and unload at the proper time.
Absolutely.
Isn't it? Because we get in a, it'll be all right kind of thing, but it only takes a moment.
It's like anything else. You're not born knowing how to do it. You have to have someone that'll take the time to show you how to do it correctly and show you how to do it safely.
Yeah.
And it's baby steps. Start when they're young, and you give them incrementally more control and more leeway, but you have to be very, very careful.
Yeah. And then we see older type of deer stands where people will just take lumber and build it. We see, the climbing stands, tree climbing stands. We see the blinds.
That's right.
Man, some of those are just camoed out and you can't see them.
And part of that, is certainly to put you at an advantage of hunting the wild game, but you certainly want to make sure that it's safe, that the integrity of the tree stand's intact. Like you said, some of these old stands are made with lumber that may not be treated, it may rot.
Yeah.
You go to climb and you could see what could happen. Algae builds up on the steps, you fall, so it's like anything else. You just want to make sure that you're as careful as you can be.
Now, Doctor, we think many times when we're going to go hunting, we hop on a four-wheeler and we take off. A lot of young people riding these very nice four-wheelers these days, and I'll meet some on the road that scare me because of how fast they're moving.
That's right.
Yeah, it's a different day for four-wheelers.
It's an all-terrain vehicle. When I was growing up, it was your standard four-wheeler. Now, we see more and more of the side-by-sides or the Ranger-type buggy ATVs that have big knobby tires. They're capable of going very high speeds, and they're just more dangerous, So you have to be very, very careful, with a child in an ATV. Always have your helmet on, things like that. They're made to be mostly on dirt, not on pavement, right?
Yeah.
And so they can become very dangerous.
Yeah. Obviously, the parent needs to be very responsible for that because you do see injuries that come from that, and some of them are just terrible things.
I would say in our county, that's probably one of the most frequent style injuries we see is from ATV trauma in a child. in a kid. You know, we've seen some terrible injuries that can be avoided, you know, but it's like anything else. We have to use them safely and within the kind of the confines of what they were supposed to be used for.
Yeah, it's very good for the adult, for the responsible person in the household to think about that young person is invincible to themselves. You were when you were that age, I was, or most of us were that way. You just think nothing could happen to me, but then there it does. So the responsible person has to be that.
That's right. Kids do have that air of invincibility about them. They're resilient and they will recover from a lot of injuries that you or I may take us a long time to recover from if we do.
Yeah.
A child has ability to jump back from those injuries, but there are certain injury patterns that are devastating. And a head injury is one of those, right?
Yeah.
If you injure your spleen, we know how to take care of that. If it's a long bone fracture, we know how to take care of that. But your brain is who makes you who you are, who I am.
Yeah.
And so that's why it's so important. If you're on an ATV, always have a helmet on. My kids don't get on it without a helmet. And that's the advice I would give for any parent.
Number one rule.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Dr.
Yeah,
Bozeman.
no.
Thanks for what you're doing in our community, how you're a part of our community, and hey, happy hunting to you.
It's a privilege to be here. Thanks for coming out today to take the time to talk to us about these hunter safety tips.